Good morning, everyone. It's Monday, January 18th. From the San Antonio Express-News, my name is Luis Vasquez, and this is your Express Briefing. All of the stories you need to know to start your day. You can expect sunny skies and a high of 68 degrees in San Antonio today. Rain chances return later this week. Today is Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Schools, post offices, financial institutions, and city offices are closed. But don't think of today as a day off, the Express-News Editorial Board writes. Read their latest editorial. Today is about completing King's work over at expressnews.com. With President-elect Joe Biden's inauguration happening this week, some downtown businesses are concerned about the potential for protests. Memories still linger of the vandalism and looting at the end of a largely peaceful Black Lives Matter protest. Jacob Beltran has more in his latest article over at expressnews.com. And now let's move on to our top stories for the day. Some of the rioters who stormed the Capitol on January 6th were decked out in apparel from two San Antonio companies, Black Rifle Coffee Company and Grunt Style, that celebrate the military. Their products appeared in pictures and videos that flooded social media platforms and news coverage of the attack, alongside such brands as Carhartt, Nike, Under Armour, and a sea of President Donald Trump-inspired t-shirts and baseball caps. Violent fringe groups appropriating brands is nothing new, according to Venki Shankar, research director at the Center for Retailing Studies at Texas A&M University in College Station. He called the phenomenon brand jacking or brand hijacking. Brandon Lingo has more in his story in collaboration with Report for America. These days, Amanda Salinas scarcely has time to catch her breath. 6 days a week, when she goes to Northeast Baptist Hospital for her nursing shift in the emergency department, she is met with a grim reality of San Antonio's COVID-19 surge. People on stretchers crowding the hallways, waiting room lines longer than she has ever seen, patients languishing in the emergency room for days, sometimes for so long that they're discharged before a bed becomes available for them upstairs, and hospital staff weary from working under arduous conditions with little respite for the better part of a year. This isn't the first surge Salinas has endured. She has worked at the hospital under a state contract since its first major wave of coronavirus infections. This time, things are different. Lauren Karuba explores how hospitals, healthcare workers, and local officials are scrambling to prevent crisis from tipping into catastrophe. Sean Theory can't recall the moment she gave birth, but she does remember how she almost died. She experienced a life-threatening complication from the epidural for a cesarean section. 8 years later, Theory, a Democratic state representative from Houston, is fighting to improve care for mothers. She is among several lawmakers who are pushing this year to make maternal health a priority amid an uphill battle to balance a $1 billion budget deficit and mend cracks in the state's economy that were widened by the coronavirus pandemic. Today, women in the U.S. are more likely to die from childbirth or pregnancy-related causes than those in other developed countries. The federal government recently published a plan with 3 main targets to achieve within 5 years. Marina Starleaf-Riker has all the details in her latest article over at expressnews.com. Nearly 1 year into the coronavirus pandemic, Eduardo Hernandez, superintendent of the Edgewood Independent School District, still doesn't quite know what the next school year will look like for his students and staff. Around Bexar County, he and other school leaders trying to plan for the fall are grappling with countless unknowns, from how much funding they will receive to the community spread of the coronavirus. But given the alarming trajectory of the new virus cases and the dragging pace of the vaccine rollout, one thing is almost certain. Schools will need to offer remote learning for the foreseeable future, maybe into 2022. Andres Picon offers a glimpse at the months ahead for local schools in his latest article. Now that more Texans can receive the coronavirus vaccine, we have everything you need to know about the vaccine over at expressnews.com. We also have an interactive dashboard monitoring how much of the state has been vaccinated, and another dashboard where we're tracking San Antonio COVID-19 case counts, hospitalizations, positivity rates, and more. Next up are your need-to-know headlines. You can find all of these headlines and more inside of your Express News subscription. San Antonio set a record for the number of people hospitalized with COVID-19 on Sunday, pushing local hospitals even closer to reaching full capacity. The number of people hospitalized with COVID-19 has increased by about 72% in the past month. Frost Bank eliminated 68 jobs last week, the first layoffs in almost 2 decades at the largest regional bank based in San Antonio. President-elect Joe Biden has big plans for his first 100 days in office when he's vowed to roll back the Trump administration's immigration crackdown, push policies addressing climate change, and potentially forgive student debt for thousands of Americans. Texas is almost certain to fight him at every step of the way, though. A deputy with the Bexar County Sheriff's Office was placed on unpaid leave after he was arrested early Sunday. According to the sheriff's office, he allegedly assaulted a fellow off-duty deputy whom he was dating. San Antonians started lining up early Saturday outside St. Margaret Mary Catholic Church on the southeast side, eager to get tested for the coronavirus. After getting tested, many of the residents received masks and hand sanitizers as well as groceries from the San Antonio Food Bank. Read more about the event over at Express-News.com. The San Antonio Coalition for Police Accountability condemned comments from the local head of the San Antonio Police Officers Association and called for an investigation of local law enforcement officers who may have participated in the riot at the Capitol. The 87th Texas legislature convened Tuesday, with city officials already finding bills that would affect San Antonio. We have a look at several measures San Antonio city leaders are keeping their eyes on this legislative session. San Antonio has hired a transportation planner with experience in Florida and the Washington, D.C. area to improve the balance between auto traffic and other modes of transportation as the director of a new city department. The rematch between San Antonio Mayor Ron Nirenberg and challenger Greg Brockhouse is off to a slow fundraising start, as both sides said they felt awkward asking for campaign contributions while COVID-19 pummeled the region and battered the local economy. State Representative Joe Deschantel, the Democrat of Beaumont, has tested positive for coronavirus as the new legislative session begins. The exposure is an early test for the Republican-led House, which has been determined to carry out as open and unrestricted session as possible. Rosie Speedling Gonzalez plans to be in Washington, D.C. this week for the inauguration of President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris. Nothing will keep the judge in County Court at Law number 13 from going. Elena Ayala explains why in her latest article. In his latest column, Gilbert Garcia explains how Joe Biden proved him wrong. COVID-19 is more proof that the president does not control the economy and never did, writes business columnist Chris Tomlinson. Check out his full column over at Express-News.com. San Antonian Ron White, author of How Computers Work, which sold 2 million copies and came out in 10 editions, died on January 5th in a downtown hospital. They were a family mystery, lost for at least 20 years. 2 rolls of black and white film, 72 photos in all, shot in 1966 at the Beatles concert at Shea Stadium during the band's final tour. Late last year, in the forced solitude of the COVID-19 pandemic, former WOAI TV investigative reporter Brian Collister found them at last while sorting through the small mountain of photographic prints, slides, and negatives in his father's apartment closet. The discovery of the images helped Collister better understand his flawed and abusive father, Robert Collister, who devoted 2 decades of service to a San Antonio group of Alcoholics Anonymous before he died in 2019. Check out the full story over at Express-News.com. Owned and run by Syrian refugees, the family history is strong at King of Shawarma and Kebab, the latest in our 52 Weeks of Food Truck series. Read more about the Medical Center food truck over at expressnews.com. The wok gathering dust at the back of your cabinet could be doing so much more. In this week's Paul's Cooking Tips column, we explore all your options. Calvin Finch explains chill hours and lists the types of peach trees that do well in San Antonio in his latest column, while Neil Sperry discusses raised garden beds, when to plant broccoli, why a bleeding heart has lost its color, and more in his down-to-earth column. Stuck in a slump from three-point range, the Spurs see no choice but to stick with it from beyond the arc. Meanwhile, the Spurs will continue to lend support to DeMar DeRozan, who has not been his best since returning from a 2-game absence to tend to his ill father. San Antonio visits Portland for a 2 p.m. game today. And that's all for today. This was your Express Briefing for Monday, January 18th. My name is Luis Vasquez. Please consider becoming an Express News subscriber to get in-depth coverage on all the stories you heard today. Also, be sure to rate and review this podcast inside of your Apple Podcast app, as it really helps the show. Have a wonderful day, everyone.